Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stover. Now, with an eye on 2023, which is election year, Nigerians are evaluating the democratic journey since 1999, appraising the impact of government and recommitting to active participation in the political process to usher in a new administration. Now, from security to the economy, human rights, the cost of living, all have been placed on the scale. Which way, Nigeria? Today, we'll look at the workings of Nigeria's political system and the socio-economic well-being of a nation on the march to general elections in 2023. My guest is a legal scholar, an international human rights lawyer, activist and law teacher. Joy Ezelu, Officer of the Order of the Niger, OON, is a professor of law at the University of Nigeria, Enugu campus. She is visiting professor to several universities across the globe. A former UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, she's founding director of Women Aid Collective WACAL, a national organization promoting human rights of women and young people. She also founded Tamar Sexual Assault Referral Center. She was at various times Commissioner for Women Affairs and Social Development in Enugu State, member Governing Council of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NIIA. She was a federal delegate to the National Political Conference in 2005. Let's welcome Professor Joy Ezelu. Prof, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Cyril Stover, and welcome viewers.
It's good to also mention that our guests were a 2019 winner of the National Human Rights Award in the individual category, right? And still more, 2022, the winner of the Civil Society Award, which was organized by the UNDP, EU delegation, US Embassy, Germany, France, among other countries. Yeah. So, well, so many accolades for you. And looking at your background, we might spend half of this program talking about them. That's why we've just selected a few. So, but all this would put you in a very good position to take a hard look at the Nigerian society, the way it's constituted, all our efforts, self-governance, socio-economic development, and so many other things. You'd be in a good position to talk about that, wouldn't you?
I think so. we are all involved one way or the other, and politics is such a serious business to leave it to the politicians alone. Right. So I think it's been a journey indeed. We've done 100 years in the making of Nigeria, over 100 years. In 2014, I think it was 100 years, right. And now we're much more than that. So, and we've seen transformation in certain areas. At least we've seen some milestone in terms of having democracy, if you look at it that way. But then after we had the transition, we've celebrated transition and then civilian to civilian rule government in terms of every election, and we've had 4 cycles already. I think the 5th one on more than actually. Then by 2019 it was actually 20, and then people are saying yes, we've come a long way, but that democratic culture is yet to take root.
All right, so yes, significant changes have taken place. And,
definitely, yes, no doubt about it.
But then there are people who would say to you, for the kind of country that Nigeria is, for its size, its population, and its perceived strengths and resources, it should be way, way, way beyond where it is now. You agree with that?
No, definitely I do. In fact, the first cultural shock I had was visiting South Africa in 1998 was my first time of going to South Africa. And when I arrived South Africa, I just looked around. Because I've gone to US, Europe, I got confused. In certain town I said, am I in the US? Where am I? Is this Africa? And then I said, where is Nigeria calling itself giant of Africa? Of course. And then if we have places like this and we are still not, but since 98 a lot has happened. If you get to there, you can begin to see semblance. But as a country, we are definitely not where we're supposed to be, given the huge resources and even human resources, because Nigerians are everywhere doing excellently well, pioneering different initiatives successfully across the world, that one would think that at home we can begin to see tangible results that will make all of us look back, not just being patriotic and say, oh, this is my city, this is my country, and other people will be coming to know you like the country. But what you see, and even during my work as UN Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking, it's the fact that Nigeria is mainly, the name comes off in pejorative, and for every negative things. Is it that drug dealing? Is it that terrorism now? Or human trafficking? Or, some fraud because of the fraudsters that will send all those fraudulent emails? So those things tend to overshadow the good aspect that Nigerians are doing well in diaspora and even within Nigeria. So, and that's what makes international news. So if you tell someone you're Nigerian, you don't be surprised if they sit upright and begin to think. And I know a couple of friends who were working abroad, and they say once somebody got an email, fraudulent email, they immediately look at them and said, your people, you gave them my email address. And embarrassing for people in very high position. And what my takeaway was, as a UN Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking, this is a job I did globally, and I traveled to every nook and corner of the world. I visited over 100 countries. I did mission in over 16 countries across the UN full country mission. I presented thematic report before General Assembly, before in New York, and Human Rights Council in Geneva, and so many other things. Is that there was no one country I visited that I did not meet Nigerians in traffic situation or in irregular migrant detention centers. And some of them, as you're trying to negotiate, even at, why don't you go back, especially for women who are trapped? They say, what future? I cannot go back. I recall one in Australia. I said, so you prefer you're here for 3 years, your case is not coming up, and there were people going mental already because they were, in Australia, they put them in a faraway place, very far away totally from the city. And people were already having mental issues, and you still think that being here is better than you're going back to your country. And that's the level of frustration. And every day in terms of migration routes, you see youth. In fact, there is a book written by Segun Adeniyi on the issue of, and it was his life story of his brother, from Prime Port to fire. And it's about migration and how people, and this I saw firsthand. In fact, when I went to Uruguay, I think there were Nigerians, 4 of them, who were in stowaway ship, and they thought they were going to America. So when they landed the ship in Uruguay, in fact, before landing, because they normally would they noticed they had some stowaways, they have to throw them overboard. But they gave them rafts, and they were drifting when eventually helicopters recovered them. And I met them there in detention center. And we're talking about, when did I visit? 2010, when I went to Argentina, Uruguay, and did a mission. So now that there is even so much hardship, the human insecurity, lack of freedom from fear and want is what is pushing these young men and women. And people are buying and selling human beings, and Nigerians inclusive, because of the desperation, the root causes, the push and pull factors, unemployment, inequalities, conflict, here and there. They are driving people. And it's not a joke, when you look at the level of, and you're just like, I wish when I did mission to UAE, I now read about the history, everything. And then, you look at who made it and how it was a dream of him. I said, why don't we have these type of visionary leaders that can take us from to the level where we want to be? I understand, yes, Nigeria is huge. Yes, we have problems internally. Yes, it's like many nationalities within the nation state Nigeria. There is problem with the structure. There is problem with the foundation, and that has not allowed it. Because if you have a faulty foundation and you're trying to build something on it, it will always be shaky. And that is a fundamental problem, including legitimacy question, even around the constitutional framework we've not been able to answer. And we kept shying away and postponing the doomsday instead of confronting it and say, oh, let's as civilized people have this discussion and know that this is not working. And then build a Nigerian of our dream. I think we'll all be better for it.
Okay, so let's take a look at the system we have in place. Yes, we have democratic governance since 1999. We have celebrated that fact that it's been uninterrupted now. But you do think that the background of regular military incursions into governance in the country did it do so much damage that up till now we are not able to shake off that past?
So I think so. And if we had even listened in retrospect to, I think it was late Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe who said we should practice diarchy. Probably it was an introduction of just having military and civilian amalgamation, knowing that this was going to impact on us for a long time to come. And we've seen it. And that's why I say the democratic culture is still not there, because under military regime, the unilateral system, the way we consult, the fact that people, when you talk of democracy, government of the people, by the people, for the people, and that the people, and including what is the primary purpose of government, which is the welfare and security of persons, securing lives and property. And even welfare is so primary. Look at when the issue of milk, for example, infant formula came up in the US, how they have to government, something that was became a primary purpose of, and it became an indicator to say government is failing. And they quickly will have to ramp up production act and went overseas and searched for the best from Switzerland, started flowing with the military, all of the formulas to make sure that people get it, because the concern, any government must be responsive to the needs of the people. The three primary things about that is leadership, visionary, and you have to be responsive, and character. But you find that even followership also has a lot of problem. And the followership in Nigeria, it got into a stage. I really pity the younger generation, because now I think some of them don't really know what is their left from their right, and they don't even know what is wrong and what is right. And you look at them, you see how rude they are. You see their mannerism, you look at and you say, where are these ones coming from? How are we going to correct this? Because it has eaten deep into society and is fueling the corruption, at all levels. And people just don't know what is right and wrong, some of them. And what they are seeing, look at those who were born, for example, after the war. What type of Nigeria have they seen? With the military, what future does it look for them?
All right. So if we say that the military in power has done so much damage that so long after we return to democratic rule, we are still grappling with issues that should unite us and make us a better people. How about the very basis for the systems that we practice, in this case, the Constitution? Two views about it. One set of views would say that Constitution is not really the Constitution of the people. Another set would say, well, so far it said that we have not even explored the various provisions and practiced them and carried them out. So what are we talking about?
That is true. First, we have to make a distinction. No doubt the Constitution is a legal document. In terms of legality questions, it answered that. That's the ground norm, is the supreme law of the land. But in terms of legitimacy question, how it came into existence, and that legitimacy is now impacting on its legality especially when you talk about observation and implementation of the provisions and understand that rules inside in the Constitution. So people feel that this was just fostered on us by the military regime that gathered without consultation, wrote this up and say, we the people. So it told a lie on itself, the Constitution in terms of the philosophy and the principles. And it didn't follow the principle or desiderata of lawmaking, especially when you talk about the supreme law of the land. So that legitimacy question has fostered crisis. But on the other, one breath too, I agree that when you look at certain provisions, those provisions were mindful of our diversity. And those provisions were intended to ensure that in that diversity we unify, and that there is fairness, and that there is equity, and there is participation of people and of every ethnic group in the government of Nigeria.
So that is contained in it. Now, if that has not been put into practice, would that necessarily be the fault of the document or those of those who operate the document?
Both, because those who operate the document also don't try to implement to the latter, and they pick and choose foreign shopping, and the ones they will say, oh, we just in accordance with the constitution and the law and rule of law. We know there was a time it was so reckless in terms of even court orders were not even obeyed. But at least we are happy that increasingly the executive arm, they are beginning to obey that. And then also you have the legislators themselves afraid even to assert their role as legislative arm, because they are supposed to be the closest to the people and a bridge between executive arm and the people, so that they feel the people, they represent the people, and then they turn. But you find a total collapse. You don't know what Nigerians are. In fact, Nigerians have vilified them because they feel they have not even represented their interest. And we have seen other things out of other democratic practice. Like when you talk of constituency project, people say what? And when they begin to make promises, I say, are you executive arm? Are you doing oversight? How do you then, regulate other government institutions if you get involved in this? So then separation of power becomes a problem. Division of power becomes a problem. The issue of devolution of even power fully becomes a problem. And then you have like the issue of the federal, state, local government not be fully developed. Then certain aspects of the constitution on individual rights, especially citizens' rights, also having problem. So that doesn't give people. Chapter 2 is supposed to promote the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. It's supposed to really promote the political objective, economic objective of the country, the national ethics, what the country represents, including even duties of Nigerians. But you see, that patriotism is lacking. So people don't see Nigeria as really a country sometimes they can die for, which is unfortunate, which is why even sometimes the security people may say if you call them and there is a problem here, they may also run for their lives. But then they may run faster than they may run for their lives, because also sometimes they feel even the system does not protect them enough, which I also agree.
Questions have been raised about the kind of leadership the country is saddled with. And when I say leadership, I do not restrict it to the national level,
Sure.
at all levels of society.
Because we always make the mistake of thinking it's national when we talk of leadership. But we have to think even the government closest to you, to what extent have they been accountable to the people? Local government is supposed to be closest, and they collect from federal, allocation, and they have their budget, and you don't know how it is utilized. Then you come to the state, then you talk of dividends, evidence of good governance. How can we explain that in a state, for example, state capital is not well lit? Street lights shouldn't be, it should be things people should take for granted. Even in Abuja, with regard to FCT, because people, you're talking of security issue, and then everywhere is in darkness because the street lights are not working. Are these things rocket science? Should we still be talking about importation of fuel? When even more than 50 years ago, people were refining fuel in their backyard, even during the war. And is this in rocket science? So in terms of benefit from scientific advancement, we've not taken full advantage of it.
Well, the political class comes into view at this point. We are back to democratic rule. The impunity of the military that Nigerians complained about is not there anymore. So how has the political class fared? We've had governments at various levels since 1999. But you still hear people say what we do have is civil rule. Democracy is something else.
Yeah.
What are we missing here?
I think when you talk of militarization of state in the military rule, you can say, yes, they didn't allow liberties. They were really straitjacketed. They tried to force discipline. And again, they had that military discipline, of course. And when you now look at democracy, you may say when impunity has stopped, maybe we don't have Decree 2, we can't get people just arrested and put away and people not know. But then it's also the political class are acting also with impunity. But impunity, defiance, like people you've elected, and they're not, you can see they are not working for the people, for you. And they feel they are above the people that have elected them and above the law. But before you know it, they're out of the office, they'll become even victim. So it's a cycle, and they have to be mindful of that. So the political elite, yes, we have replaced one impunity, and I think we need to carry out a study. Even with the military, I don't think they were corrupt. The kind of corruption we've seen, even in this our 20-something years of democracy uninterrupted, is unknown to. Yes, people may talk and point to Abacha and say, yes, he acquired, all of the money that every day they are still repatriating, and people are wondering whether this money will ever get to, whether we'll ever see the end of getting all those money back from. But then it could be just one man. But when you look at other people at different levels, at state governors, the military governors, then it wasn't that rampant and widespread. Today is so widespread that at every level, even civil service, then you hear about people 80 billion. We have about people embezzling pension funds, and people are dying from the amount of money is mind-boggling. And the worst, and for me as a lawyer and a law professor, is lack of accountability. That even prosecution takes forever. Sometimes EFCC, they get frustrated as well. The system is, and prosecution, they will devise all kinds of ways, to thwart the system and make sure they don't pay the price.
But doesn't that put the entire judicial system up? Is that not calling out the judicial system? You're a lawyer, and so many reasons have been adduced for this, and there are those who say
lawyers are supposed to be even in the temple of justice. They will also be the ones who will present the court, and if times you feel that they're also implicated because they want these cases adjourned. Some of the judges that are upright will get frustrated. They use all kinds of tricks and just to make sure that this doesn't go on, and then they exploit the system to the fullest. But I believe that with the justice sector reform going on, and especially even in the huge, it was almost a revolution in the criminal justice system. Not that we are there in terms of full implementation, but I believe that even the National Judicial Council, they are doing their bit, and they are increasingly querying even corrupt judges, because there is corruption in the system, no doubt about it. Just like corruption has permeated every level, is a hydra-headed problem, and it has permeated at all levels of governance.
Let's get back to the political class and the very poor showing. Would you say this is because there is not a discernible ideology amongst the political class? Yes, we do have parties, 18 of them, I believe, now.
18 now.
But what's there to choose from them?
Nothing. You can't say they are all the same. And they, in terms of those principles, ideals upon which the parties are founded, they are not deep. Even if they've captured it on paper, there is a gulf between the paper, the law in the books, and the law in action. So in reality, they ignore totally their manifestos. Their constitutions of the parties are observed more in breach. And then they don't have even regard for that, and they don't pursue programs based on that. And what you see is mainly personalities and individuals. Individuals can set out their programs, because you don't need to be setting over your programs. If actually you're a party person and the party has evolved and the party has its own ideology, you will have to take from the party what the party stands for. It will just be a little how you explain it and how you want to go about it. But you see all of them, if it's the governor, they will have to go and get their own 10-point agenda of what they would do. Senator with the same, everybody the same. And if you go to look at what their party manifestos or constitution, they will be at variance. So total mismatch. So internal democracy completely absent. And INEC is supposed to monitor. I think Section 83, even and the Constitution also 78, they give them the power to monitor, but I think it's overwhelming. INEC to even monitor whether they've implemented some of these, things they put in the party
There have
constitution.
been many attempts to address these things we talk about, and in terms of conferences, dialogues, and even at national level. And you were a participant in one of such conferences in 2005,
Yes,
and you were a delegate.
I was a federal delegate.
Yes. So
representing
would it be
Southeast.
that all those discussions and what emanated from them were just not good enough to change
Yeah.
the system that we were talking about?
I think what emanated from them were good, and they were submitted very beautiful report. I must tell you, we had about 20 committees. I recall the one I participated, and white papers were supposed to be generated from there, and I never saw the white paper. And even if it happened, it never translated to anything tangible. And I wouldn't spend my time again on that. I know that the issue of national discussion or national dialogue is still very important in negotiating the Nigerian state, because I don't think it's cast in stone. I think we can continue to negotiate, and in order to make us a better society and better human being. But I would rather say, if we have all the living presidents in Nigeria, they themselves are the ones that are supposed to hold this national dialogue. We should just get them, all of them that are living, to go and sit down, lock them for 1 month or 7 days. Let them talk to themselves. They get people record. What was it that they've done? What is it that they regret? What do they think is the problem of Nigeria? How do they think? And how? Let them come up then with their document, because we have quite a number of them living.
Right.
Because it has passed. We just can't. We have everything that it takes. Like when we had windfalls from oil sales, and we came up with sovereign sovereign fund, and then we thought we were saving, and when we discharged, we got debt reliefs, and they wiped off, and within next 10 years again, still within a cycle of 20, we have built it up. You're wondering, what is it that is really going on? So we need to, it is the president of the Nigerians, all of them as a collective that should come, and then dialogue and come out with a blueprint on the way forward for this country. With the people, yes. And then they will give us, we will now demand for a constitution that will really be we the people, that will come from us, that will be based on referendum, because people want to participate in the government of their country. Yes, our fellowship has problem because now ethnicity impacts heavily on our democracy, where you come from.
Well, Prof, when you talk about this discussion at national level, and there are some legal challenges here. For instance, would that not impinge on the functions of a sitting National Assembly?
I don't think so. People can argue yes, and that has been the argument in the past, and that was, I think it was a bit selfish, and that's why the first conference that was convoked under President Obasanjo never didn't get to use those recommendations to govern. And it was indeed a very big missed opportunity, because it was early in our democracy. And for us to have come up with that, one would have thought that the National Assembly, even though they said they were not carrying along, yes, some people can argue they are elected representatives, but the nature of the work they do, or probably what would have happened was that there could have been a law passed by National Assembly that could have even permitted this type of, so that at the end of the day, we'll find a way, it then will become compulsory, kind of mandatory, actually, that those recommendations will be taken, and those that require legislative enactment in order to come into to fruition should be then will happen. That was a missed opportunity. In the second round of the conference again, the same thing happened again. They didn't also get that mandate, and that meant also that nobody was ready to, and always happening almost at the end of each tenure of the president.
If you did the same thing now, what would that change? Would it not end up the same way the others?
I think lessons from all the ones that failed will help. The lessons will help, because you don't want to go the same route. You will now say, okay, let's get a law. The National Assembly, yes, you cannot. Maybe as you go, people are saying maybe you're not too representative of them, but beside they feel that yes, you have a role in lawmaking, but this is beyond lawmaking. That these are just like, call it negotiators, mediators, thinkers, and a decision, a collective of people, and with representing the people. I know they are representing the people that want to come up with another blueprint, and you people will take it forward to look at what should be implemented. And if it's backed up by a law, ab initio from the beginning, it will be different.
All right, we've seen a little bit about the leaders. What about the followership? It's said that, well, rightly or wrongly, that if people get the leaders they deserve. Is that the case with us?
I think so, because the demand side, if the demand side is low, especially in terms of raising accountability stake, then the elected officials and their constituency, they take people for granted. And that demand side is low.
So
because
if those seeking
of other
office,
primordial sentiments.
if those seeking office have paid those who are supposed to elect them, why would they be accountable to them?
They look back and said, yes, I know how I got here. It's not you that put me there. It's not your vote. Because they know they have paid for the vote, or they know they bought it, and through mercantile politics we practice, and then they have also others who are their godfathers, and it's a business, it's enterprise, political enterprise. So if it's an enterprise and you commercialize it, and then they go there to make their money, and they get their money back, reap their profits. So the person who have sold their vote and their conscience become less and less important in terms of ability, because what is the value of that your vote? You have already given it away because of stomach infrastructure, which almost everybody is suffering from at all levels, even those who are in political elites as well. So the issue is that we have, unfortunately, and it requires a lot in terms of conscientization, value reorientation, to get people, because like I said, people don't know what is wrong. You can see some people, even parents, come to you, for admission. They will just say, please, any amount, I want to get my child. And then you look at their child's score is very poor. You look at other, so people don't know the value. They just think they are doing the right thing. Everything is buying and selling. It has come to that. If you can afford it, yes, you can afford. The educational system, you look at what it is now. Even the students themselves are no longer as challenging as even when we are students, in terms of even you come to teach a class, they are busy with social media, they are busy with so many other things. They are not even, reading their books. So we have problem. We really have serious problem,
We'll take a moment here. When we return, we will examine how to ride above these challenges and get the country going in the direction that we all so desire. Stay with us on One on One.
Hoping that their educational deprivation is not the end of the world.
Agencies and stakeholders to proactively tackle these challenges.
Women in most countries of the world constitute about 50% of registered voters. Kevin Williams, reporting for Dateline 360.
In Jos, Caleb Gochin, Deadline 360.
Naja Atiti.
Deadline 360. Chidi Okrafo.
For Deadline 360.
In Lagos, Michael Olaleye.
Reporting for Deadline 360. I am Omosola Omojola. Thanks for tuning in.
Weekend File, your Saturday delight, going to places from the obscure to the hinterland and cities, bringing you development stories and perspectives, connecting the people with government and stakeholders on critical issues of our national life.
We are live in Abuja.
It's 9 p.m. every Saturday on the network service of the NTA. Weekend File, you can't afford to miss it.
Right. Thanks for staying with us. We're still here with Professor Joy Ezilu. Yes, this has all happened. The leadership, questions about the leadership, questions about the followership. But 2023 is the year of election, and we've seen a flurry of political activities going on throughout the country. People putting themselves up for leadership, elective office once again, and Nigerians having to go through the whole gamut of checking out who wants to be who wants to be in what position, and which party is jostling for the top position. As we go into 2023, what should the political parties themselves be doing that they've not been doing right in the past, and what would the followership take into account?
Yeah. You know, political parties are supposed to be involved in civic education. They don't just do electioneering campaign without even selling themselves, people knowing their motto, their flag, what symbol, what they stand for, understanding their manifestos. They just do that, political campaign, but actual civic education on how to vote, even for their members. Because you can see with the so-called highly prized delegates, allegedly highly prized delegates that came to elect the presidential candidate, you can see voided votes. And you're wondering, how could somebody be a delegate, highly contested, that people are now aspiring to be delegates, and then you still come up there and waste that vote? It then means that just like some of them don't even have their party constitution, they don't know what it says. They don't have the forum to educate their members. Let them start with their members. And then in those rural areas at ward level, begin to engage with the people so that people, and these are ways of building that ideology and operationalizing their party's manifestos. But they have failed to do that. Yes, social media is just helping. It's all around personalities these days. And I think in the end, and for 2023 election, what will drive that is the personality, who is standing for what position, and not necessarily political parties, the way it's going. But then again, you see the huge youth surge to vote and to acquire their PVCs. And we've seen also a lot of frustration in that regard with voters trying to register and get their VCs. And we are hoping that INEC will live up to expectation in terms of making sure that those permanent voters cards come out long before election, so that we don't end up with such of millions of cards that people will not get, and at the end of the day, they are also not allowed to exercise their franchise, which is a right that they have to participate in the government of their country and to get involved in decisions affecting them. So with the social media, it's going to be a very big deal. It's already influencing a lot in this election. And that's why you see political parties also clamoring to all be present and to use and deploy the social media. But then what about, remember, it's still digital double divide for people who cannot access those social media, for the people in rural areas, for others, rural women, and evidence has shown that a lot of women vote and a lot of those rural people vote. And some of them are concentrating.
Right. Speaking of which, what is the level of women's participation in politics and in governance?
I would just say decimal. Decimal, and it has been, in terms of women's political entrepreneurship, because it has been outright failure now, and we have seen regression, unfortunately, and regression without there being a major thing like conflict that happened to make that happen. If you look at the numbers in 2003 and 11 for sure, you had 8-9 women, had over 27 in the parliament, in the House of Representatives. Today, if you look, it's far less. And for 2023, as far as my own projection is concerned, women again have lost. They are not going to get what they have now. And if care is not taken, they might also lose further ground. And it's something of great concern, because when you look at the ability of Nigerian women, the fact you can see Nigerian women occupying number 2 in the United Nations, number 1 in World Trade Organization, and so many other places, you see that we have successful women, intellectuals, entrepreneurs, and activists, scholars, everything. But then education is, how come that in terms of representation, it is still so low that is actually under 10%, 6.4% or so nationally.
I know we talk about affirmative action and how successful it's been, but would you go, for instance, for a law that says a specific percentage must be reserved for?
I will go for that, and I've been part and parcel of making such laws. In Rwanda Constitution, I participated. I spent time in Rwanda when they were writing their constitution after the genocide. I was also part of including that section and the affirmative action in Rwanda Constitution. And today you can see where they are, 2001. From that time, the constitution came into existence to now, with that 30% affirmative action, they now have more than 50-50 representation. And not only the best in Africa, they are leading even for the world. And you can see how the country has transformed, because women can help to raise the quality of leadership. And that's what we are forgetting in this country. Progress for women is progress for women is progress for men, and it's progress for the family.
Wouldn't this be seen as tokenism?
Or if you have that affirmative action.
Well, if you just say, okay, just...
Not really, if it's backed up by law. And political parties can, by the way, have political parties are quotas. And if you study their manifestos, as I've done, you can see some of them have level of from 30% to 15%, whether in the National Executive Committee to actual election and candidate. But the problem is that they are not implementing that, and nobody is holding them to account. And even the National Gender Policy talk about 35% in appointive and elective position. Again, that is not being implemented. So that's why if you have like a constitutional provision, and really the women, and Honorable Kiruka Onyajacho made a lot of effort to have this law that will have increased the number of women in parliament, national parliament, by 111. And that will have mean that, for example, for every 3 senatorial seats in a state, you reserve 1 for a woman. And it will be women-only constituency, where only women can compete across all parties. And some have practiced what you call twining or zebra. So if you have this position, if it's occupied by a man, then the next one will be a woman. If it's the governor, then the deputy will be a woman. So that way it will bring in. But it's not just for me, I don't think it's so much about just numeric. You know, women, of course, have not been able to use their numerical strength to increase their representation.
Exactly. That's another thing people would look at. If there's so many women, and then why are they not using that advantage to change things around?
Because they vote where the men ask them to vote. And then the fact that some of them also, you have internalized the dichotomy between the public and private space, and what is the space of the woman, and then the dichotomy between productive and reproductive role, and women seeing their role primary of the society, and conditioning them to see that role as reproductive. And then also lack of support, because you have to look at those the factors, the stumbling block, the roadblocks, and there are several. So barricades are too many. For the women, apart from the cost, look at the cost of form. You see this time, how many women could afford to get that, even though some parties waived that. But when they waived expression of interest form, maybe they may waive that, but did not waive the actual nomination form. And it was expensive. It's expensive.
There's the allegation that when women eventually get into positions that they might contest, they don't take it seriously, and some would point at the last primaries and the parties and the number of women who actually made it to be aspirants.
Yeah, because some of them don't believe that given the male biases and given the gender stereotypes, that they will actually be voted for. So we are talking about actually running and winning election, and not just being an aspirant for the sake of aspirant. Though, yes, some have rushed in the past because the forms were free and they just acquired that without doing their homework. It is also something you have to plan, including the budget, know how you want to raise your fund, and then have your program set out. Some are just not that. And because, again, some have accused even the women who will say so-called qualified women that they are not the ones participating in politics. Most of them don't want to be in the political arena for some of those reasons we've given, including that the environment is not enabling gender-based violence and name calling and pejorative names for women politicians. So they kind of stay away, even though they are successful in their own ways, and so they wouldn't want to participate. Then you leave it, if you leave it to people who you think are cheerleaders and they are not gladiators, and if those cheerleaders are asked, okay, pick a form for elected position, there is no way they can take it seriously, unfortunately. But I think there has been so much injustice on women in terms of the gross underrepresentation of women. Where the power is, women are not. So let's just know that that is the truth.
Going forward in 2023, what should women do?
I think women they have the numerical strength and they really vote at elections. It is time that they can help determine who gets there. Look at the constitutional processes and how women got marginalized in the end, including the bill that will have entrenched affirmative action, the issue of indigeneity that impacts on women, issue of even citizenship for women, Nigerian women who are married to foreign spouses, all those issues and affirmative action within political parties. They were what would have aided women to stand and run for election and then have a good chance of winning that. But without those provisions, and even the parties themselves are not adopting legislative quotas, they are not adopting party quotas that make sense. They have no intention of implementing that. So women should identify themselves, identify those who believe in gender equity, in advancing gender equality and women empowerment and empowerment of all women and girls, leaving no one behind. If they identify such people, they should queue for them. And they should be able to sell them to sign on to this charter that will hold them accountable, gender accountability. They will say, what will they do for women if they get there? I recall the late Yaradua Musa, Yaradua then of blessed memory, was also telling women in those campaigns, he said, I will give you 30%. I believe in the affirmative action. We need that kind of commitment, and women can extract that commitment. They can. Given their number, they can extract that commitment. It's just organization. And I believe they're organizing better today than yesterday. So if they put their house in order, and if we could talk to each other, irrespective of where they are located, yes, women are scattered hegemony, we're not homogeneous group and have all the differences, and those differences that affect Nigeria also affect women. But if they organize, they will get what they want.
Prof, I must ask you this. It's still about the political system in Nigeria. Some have said we practice the presidential system. Yes, it's not suited to our peoples and their cultures and traditions. But we did the parliamentary, and the same claims were made. So the question is it the system? Is it the people, or a little bit of both?
I think a little bit of both, but I think now the more I think about it, I think it's about the people. We have the Nigerian factor, definitely. When you hear about the Nigerian factor, it is there, and it is the people that are Nigerians, and we are the people. It is about the people, not the system. And where I have problem with the system, that I think even the presidential system, the centralization of power, the powers of the president, but importantly, the cost of governance.
Right.
The cost of governance worries me, because in a parliamentary system, parliamentarians, those elected, become ministers. So at least it saves a lot of cost. But even the acrimony, when I watch even British and how they do in the parliament, I know Nigerians can practice that too. Now, there's going to be fight every day in the parliament, and it's going to be so acrimonious. I don't think that even that we are civilized or sophisticated enough for that type of democracy. So people can argue, can we find our own brand?
Right,
we are grown. I think so, because already we are not even practicing fully the presidential system. And the federal system, we are not practicing it. Physical federalism, what are those principles that make a federal state? Are we giving the constitutionalism in terms of the constitutionalism of it? Constitutions, you find that we are not even, following. We're not even maintaining that separation of powers. We're not even the devolution of power. We are not even practicing it. So physical federalism is the way. And we have to look at models of similarly situated country or countries that have overcome poverty. Not that they've overcome, but at least they are developing and they're advancing in technology like India. If they look at them, how did this world largest democracy conduct election? And it works. Let me tell you, not just that it works, that people will not have mind to go and steal the ballot box. In fact, they told us even in some inaccessible areas, I've gone on mission there, that they carried in donkeys the ballot boxes and they drop it and nobody goes to want to steal it or something or to damage the machines and everything. So it's not in them. So that's why I think it's the people, because that democratic culture is totally absent. And that's where we have to talk about this value orientation and reorientation, because we don't have it anymore.
Well, Professor Joy Zilo, it's been so interesting talking to you. This is by no means the end of this conversation. We're hoping that we'll ask you to come again and further explore how this country can align itself towards the path of growth and socioeconomic development. For now, I would like to thank you for coming on One-on-One. And just one last bit before we go, quickly.
I didn't know it's time.
Right.
It went so quickly.
Yes, it always does. One last bit quickly before we go. 2023, should Nigerians be hopeful that there's enough political awareness now to make a difference?
There is, but I'm still worried. That's the aspect that worries me, is the level of illiteracy in the country. And that's where I think more should be done in terms of civic education. And when you have that level of illiteracy, and that's where I worry about democracy. I'm beginning to worry, and whether we are even suited for that, because people can never make very informed decisions. It can only be for those who are in privileged position, and for those who are aware, and for those who are literate, and for those who have access to social media that can make. For others, they'll just ask, where do you want me to vote? And they vote.
On that note, we'll say thank you once again for coming on One-on-One.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. And that's our program today. Thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with One-on-One. I'm Cyril Stover. Continue to stay safe.